Hey everyone, how's it going? So the next Rick and Morty video will be on Ruin's channel and will be up whenever. So now we're done with the collabs for now. Now it's fine to talk about the next comic, Geiger.
Actually, I just talked to Ruins. Apparently you guys still have to record some stuff.
Okay, let's talk about Geiger. Published in 2021, Geiger was one of the first in a new line of comics by the partnership of Image Comics and Mad Ghost Productions, a production company that was founded by famed comic book writer Geoff Johns. Now, this isn't the first time I've covered Johns' work. As for Thanksgiving, I covered JLA, JSA, Virtue and Vices, and yes, I'm aware that I said the name wrong in their review. All I can say is I was tired and I had a lot on my plate. John started out his career in a very interesting way, starting out as an intern for Richard Donner, who was of course famous for directing the 1978 Superman movie, and the better cut of Superman 2. That's right, I said it. While assisting on one of his films in New York,
Johns would end up the DC offices there
and meet up with some of the higher-ups and veteran writers, which would lead to him finding a new career path and was seen as, up until 2018,
the guy of DC Comics.
From the JSA to JLA, Geoff Johns was seen as the company's heavy hitter. Why'd it end? Well, it's a variety of different things, but two major factors seem to be his rocky relationship with editor-in-chief at the time, Dan DiDio, that was especially noticed near the tail end of DC Rebirth, as Doomsday Clock started in November 2017, but got delayed so many times that it didn't end until December of 2019. As Dan wasn't exactly happy that Johns was undoing all the stuff he set up in New 52. The second seemed to be simply that he was growing tired and wanted to do something new. I mean, besides doing a few comics for Marvel, he really was known best for his time at DC, and I could see him taking a break from that for a while at least. And that's where Image comes in. And fans were curious. Could he move on from DC after being their poster child for so long? Could Image be a good place for him? And what would he be up to? Well, let's dive into Geiger Volume 1 and find out. Warning, spoilers. Our story begins with two guys in hazmat suits traversing a massive crater in the Nevada desert, with their Geiger counter going off the scale, meaning that the radiation levels are spiking like crazy, making a good breeding ground for the nasties, which is a nice way of describing the creatures that roam these parts. And without their myrtleizer, man, these guys are amateurs. Though one of the guys is more curious about someone that some call the Meltdown Man, one of the few people who roam these irradiated deserts without a hazmat suit. After the events of the Unknown War, his name was Tariq Geiger, and everything he did, good or bad, was for his family. We flash back to the very beginning of the war, with Geiger taking his family to the bunker, and it seems that the bombs are going to drop any minute. He's about to join them, but his dog notices someone heading their way, revealing their neighbors who are planning to kill him and his family so they could take their bunker. He forces his family to go without him, but before his neighbors could pull the trigger, the bomb drops, killing his neighbors but transforming Geiger. 20 years later, we find Geiger is still very much alive as he protects the bunker still, and though many try to fight him, he reveals that the explosion transformed him into a superpowered being who can manipulate radiation, with the side effect being that his skin turns translucent and his skeleton glows. Essentially, he's Blight from Batman Beyond. To add more to his badass factor, he has a two-head wolf backing him up. Meanwhile, we see how the rest of society is adjusting to this radioactive wasteland, with the King of Camelot. Well, okay, it's the Camelot Casino in Las Vegas. Cause if Fallout has taught us anything, nothing can beat the slots. Short version, Vegas has been split into 6 territories, with each one going with the themes of the big casinos in town. And when I say they go with the themes, I mean they go with the themes. It's only been 20 years, and yet in Camelot, we got people dressing up in medieval attire and talking in ye olde English. Their leader, the king, is planning to expand his territory, but those plans go sideways as one of the waitresses, named Carolina, attempts to save her children from servitude by stealing from one of the king's men, Hazmat, a key card that can get them out of the city, but also a map to NORAD, the only place that's still under government control. Unfortunately, Hazmat found out and killed her, but luckily her daughter, Haley, and her son, Henry, are able to get away. But things get complicated as they're attacked by night crawlers, giant ants. Because of course there would be giant insects, it wouldn't be the apocalypse without them. Luckily, Geiger came in and saved the kids, and after the previous encounter with the king, where his first attempt to gain more territory ended up with him not just getting scarred by Geiger, but also revealing that the bunker he's been protecting has been more like a tomb, as his family is revealed to be dead. Which, yeah, I mean, it's been 20 years, but doesn't make it less sad. Searching for purpose after losing his family, Geiger hopes to regain what he's lost by helping this family. How does that go? How will the king seek his revenge revenge? What other strange things will this irradiated wasteland throw at our glowing hero and his young friends? Well, you're gonna have to read to find out. This comic is a pretty fun start and a love letter to comics that took place in the Atomic Age, while of course taking some inspiration from post-apocalyptic stories from other media like Mad Max and Fallout. The story itself is pretty standard lone wanderer, helping people find a safe haven, but the characters are interesting enough to not make it feel stale. My only complaint is that the story starts out kind of odd as it starts jumping at different points in time, but with the exception of Geiger's origin story, it kind of feels unnecessary, like the scene where Geiger's facing the king and his knights. Speaking of Geiger, let's talk about characters. Geiger, as I said, is the classic lone warrior archetype, heavily inspired by characters like Mad Max, Eli from the Book of Eli, and Kamandi from DC Comics, where he's the lone survivor badass who helps whenever he can, but is also inspired by characters like Robert Neville from I Am Legend, where he tries to pass the time reading and keeping his mind busy, as up until the reveal, he's trying to resist the urge to open the doors and reunite with his family. I do wish we got to see more of him and his family before all this, but unfortunately we only get the opening and the flashback revealing that he was terminally ill and going through experimental radiation therapy, which is hinted to be one of the reasons why he survived. During the journey, he is riddled with guilt. He couldn't keep his family alive, so he tries his best to protect the kids and maybe get a second chance at being a parent. Next, we got Haley and Henry, the two orphan children that Geiger tasks himself into taking them to NORAD. Haley, being the oldest, is the more responsible type, especially in this apocalyptic future, as she's always taking care of their home while their mom is working. By the time her and Henry escape Vegas, she's prepared to go through hell to finally escape the king. Though once they do make it to NORAD, she finally experiences something that she's been deprived of, a chance to be a kid. Though of course there's always a catch. As for Henry, he's pretty much the young kid archetype, someone who craves adventure and who looks up to Geiger. But there's a bit of a twist, as at first he's a little afraid of Geiger, as he's kind of seen as a bit of the boogeyman in their parts. I will say his pseudo father-son relationship with Geiger is sweet, if a bit rushed, though there is a tragic moment in the end, though I won't spoil it. So to sum up, the two are solid characters. Finally, I'm going to talk about the king, and he's probably the weakest part of the story. All he does is bitch and moan about how he's the king and better than everyone else. Johns attempts to give him a tragic backstory and layers to his personality, but honestly, he's just annoying. I would have preferred if the other warlords in Vegas were the main antagonists, as they seem more interesting, or even the antagonists that show up in the end, but unfortunately we don't get to spend enough time with them as characters to feel invested. Though with Volume 2 going on right now, that might change. The art was done by Gary Frank, who, like Johns, has a long history at DC, with his most popular project being Superman Brainiac. His art can vary to being very action-packed and detailed, but like Padilla on King Grimlock, he kind of duplicates a few characters' facial features, but at least here, the overall designs are different enough it doesn't cause as much confusion. Speaking of the designs, like the story, it's clearly inspired by classic comics, but also stuff like Fallout, but not to the point where it feels like a ripoff, and instead feels like a unique place. On a whole, Geiger is a fun comic, but feels like it needs more time to really introduce Johns' creating. So the story, on a whole, is solid, and with the exception of the main villain, the characters are likable and is a nice start. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more updates. Next time, we dive into a world that also has futuristic knights, but also was adapted into a film that was nominated for Best Animated Feature. As next time, we're gonna cover Nemo.
Alright, I'm here. Joe told me about the review you're doing. So, you wanna get started?
Ice Cat, the review's over.
Oh, you already started right at me. That's okay. Man, Joe needs to tell me before you're about to start. But anyway, got a lot of things to do. But maybe I could be your review next time, and whatever review we're planning to do.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Ice Cat. Anyway, I'm pretty sure you know what I'm covering next. Later.